Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy. But America's agriculture landscape is not easy to navigate. Between different companies, scientific advancement, government regulations, advertising campaigns, and an unhealthy amount of myth and misconception, anyone would be hard-pressed to make sense of it. That's where Real Ag comes in. From the producers who make your food to the store where you buy the final product and everything in between. This is Real Ag. Air spraying, aerial application, or even crop dusting as it is sometimes called, is a method of distributing pesticides, fertilizer, and weed killers over crops without the use of ground spraying machines. Oftentimes, aerial application is the most economical method for timely pesticide applications. This allows for large and often remote areas to be rapidly treated far faster than other forms of application. We will look at air spraying in Kansas as we visit with some local air spraying pilots on this episode of Real Ag. Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.
Rolling terrain, dense foliage, and wet soil can often prevent traditional methods of treating an area. Aerial application may be the only method available to fertilize or treat pests, being conducive to higher crop yields, as well as being non-disruptive to the crop, as well as preventing soil compaction, thus preventing soil runoff. Aerial applications have been shown to increase yields 8% more than ground application. Thus, aerial applications have resulted in less land needing to be used in agricultural production in various regions. Aerial applications can often be the most economical and sometimes the only method for timed pesticide applications, permitting large and sometimes remote areas to be treated rapidly and far faster than any other form of application. But what exactly is air spraying, and why would a farmer use air spraying versus ground applications?
So air spraying is using an aircraft to apply pesticides to crops, growing crops. Pesticides being herbicides for killing weeds, insecticides for killing bugs, fungicides for disease, and also we spray fertilizer and also dry granular fertilizer we can spread and cover crop seeding as well.
Air spraying is the process of dispensing agricultural products through an airplane and doing it safely and efficiently.
You're not running over any crop, you're not getting any ground compaction. Maybe your accuracy is not quite as pinpoint as using a ground sprayer, but it definitely has its benefits and its reasons to use. Otherwise, you know, if there was really no reason to use it, we wouldn't use them.
We can dispense chemicals over crops without touching the crop.
If it's rainy or wet where you can't travel the ground, we use an airplane for that. Also, the crops like the corn right now is over 6 foot tall, and so traveling to spray corn for the fungus and the fungicides would damage the crop. Also, like on wheat, if you travel the wheat, you're driving over the wheat, and you're losing your crop by driving over it and killing it, and you're losing bushels that way.
This particular field, we did not have any aerial application done, mostly because it's small and we're in the middle of the experiment station. If this was on a regular farmer's field, most likely, yes, we would have some aerial application done, specifically for the head moth, because this is an insect that shows up when the ray petals start to come away from the head of the sunflower and the head moths start showing up. They can be pretty detrimental to yield, and so then at that point we would have an aerial application done with some insecticide to control those head moths that are out on the sunflowers.
Yeah, we do utilize aerial spraying for some fungicides and stuff like that later in the corn growing season, mainly because, you know, at that point corn's too tall for us to cover with our ground rigs, so aerial spraying is applied for those reasons.
So we would look at doing the insecticide application aerially because we can get across the sunflowers. So if you were trying to spray with regular ground equipment, you're going to have to navigate rows, which can be a real challenge. And then we need something that's high enough so we are not breaking stems over as you would be driving equipment through it. So just to maintain the quality of your crop, aerial application makes more sense than trying to go over the top, because then inevitably we would be running over sunflowers and causing some damage to the plants.
Well, for one, we hope to not leave tracks in the fields, for one, and that ground rigs do run over a little bit of the percentage of the crop. And then you have the soil compaction issues with the weight that the sprayer is, plus the chemicals in the water to disperse it. So you have less compaction, you have less crop damage, and we're more timely. We can usually get there and get the field covered in a very timely manner, more than loading up a ground rig or loading a ground rig from point A to point B. You know, there are some times where a grower will turn in a field and he'll go ahead and get in his car and leave, and we'll load it up and we'll beat him back to the house and have the job done before he gets back to the house. So it's the timely manner, especially in bugs and disease pressure years, you know, it really helps the growers out.
Most of our season around here is spraying fungicide on wheat, and they like to not have tracks through their wheat at the time that it needs to be sprayed. The other seasons that we have in our biggest season is pasture, spraying pastures. The terrain around here is so rough that they can't get ground rigs through their pastures, so they hire us to come spray. And
overall, the application fee is higher because it's obviously more expensive to operate an airplane. Plus, we own our own spraying equipment, so we do all of our own spraying on farm. So therefore, if we don't have to hire it out, it's obviously less expensive for us to use our own rigs.
A lot of times, you know, growers will just call and say they have a certain type of bug or a certain type of disease, and you know, they'll say, you know, whatever you have there, that'll take care of it, and we'll run what we have here, make a recommendation that way.
In the early days of aerial applicators, the industry was known for its crop dusting pilots because they applied dry chemicals, such as insecticides, to farmland. Today, the industry is now known as aerial application, as mostly liquid, such as pesticides and fertilizers, to help American agriculture grow and control pests and diseases. Known for their fast and efficient crop protection, farmers have come to rely on ag planes for applications of plant nutrients, such as fertilizers, pest and disease control like pesticides, as well as for the seeding of cover crops to modern soil conservation. As a result of ag aviation, American farmers are using less land more efficiently to feed more people than ever. So how is air spraying done?
Farmer will turn in a field to us to have sprayed. Usually get a recommendation from himself or an agronomist, and as far as what chemicals they want to use. They'll turn the field in to us, we'll load the airplane with the chemicals, and with our mapping system tells us exactly where to go. We've got GPS coordinates for the maps, and also just regular maps to see the field. We'll fly to the field and apply the pesticides to that field and come back and then bill the farmer. Most people don't know, you know, how easy it is, but yeah, they just give us a call, we'll get it done, and the job's done.
This airplane that I fly is an Air Tractor 502. It holds 500 gallons of product. Most of the chemical that goes out is about 2 gallons an acre, and that allows me to do a little over 200 acres per load. We can do all sorts of things, anywhere from spreading fungicides for killing fungus, herbicides for killing weeds, and insecticides for bugs, and all sorts of good stuff.
For us in this area, we're about mid-April through October. We have lots of different crops out here. Anything from wheat in the spring to spraying headworms and milo in the fall, then fall pasture spraying. It seems like here it's almost never ending. It's a good long push from mid-April on.
According to the 2019 NAAA survey, The agricultural aviation industry treats 127 million acres of cropland aerial each year. Some crops are treated more than once during a season. An aerial application treats an estimated 28% of this cropland. Nearly 100% of forest protection applications are made by the agricultural aviation industry. The 5 most commonly treated crops among aerial application operators are corn, wheat or barley, soybeans, pastures, rangelands, and alfalfa, but aerial applications are used on nearly all crops. Knowing all this, what area can air application aircraft cover?
With the airplane here, our area that we service here is about 50 miles from this area in any direction. So we go north I-70 up towards Wilson and south, basically 50 miles radius from here. Typically on a daily basis we can cover a lot of ground from 200 to 250 acres an hour sometimes, depending on how good the fields are and small the field sizes make a big difference.
It does hold quite a bit of fuel. I think the range would depend on the wind, but I can fly around probably, with full tanks I could fly for probably 3.5 hours. Typically when I'm spraying, we don't fill it up with fuel that much, but typically I carry around 150 gallons of fuel, and that'll get me 1.5 hours to 2 hours comfortably while I'm out spraying.
Ferrying to the field, we usually fly about 500 feet off the ground at ferry height, 500 to 1,000 feet. During the spray operation, we're about 6 to 12 feet above the crop spraying. And then if we go long distances, they can climb up to 6, 7, 8,000 feet above the ground.
If you're in a busy airspace, I go spray up in Nebraska a little bit, and sometimes I'll get into a towered airspace like Grand Island, and typically they don't really care what you're doing or where you're at, but because I'm in their airspace, I always give them a call and let them know what I'm doing, and they typically tell me that, oh, if you're not going to be over 200 feet, don't talk to us, we don't care.
Every once in a while, if you're in a certain airspace that requires communication with them, you'll have to fill out a flight plan or communicate with air traffic control on certain places. There's a restricted area north of here that you have to communicate with them before you can get into there or through there. Also, if you're going to do any mosquito stuff over cities, which we don't do any of it, but if you do, you'll have to get with that city and get a plan in place with the FAA to do that type of stuff.
I can't remember exactly what our GPS is telling us, but it's pretty dang accurate. If you've ever seen the chemical come out of an airplane, it's kind of just a big fog, and I take about a 75-foot swath as I'm going. As you see, it's not a 75-foot boom, and it's about a 30-foot boom, but I can take a 75-foot swath because the air coming over the wings will take the chemical out. Then, as long as the conditions are right, it'll just go out and make a nice 75-foot swath and lay right down.
You always got your head on a swivel. You're assessing the situation where you are, where the field is, and typically that starts off from the work order and the picture that we have. So we have a good idea where houses are, where certain populated areas, what winds we're going to need prevailing to accomplish that job for the grower and not get any off-target drift into places it's not supposed to be. People don't like it when you go out and they got a nice big old garden and you're trying to help the farmer out and the wind's blowing right out. This big beautiful garden, you can see that from the air, and you know that you gotta stay away from that, because you'll get a nasty gram or a phone call from a very upset lady that her tomatoes are now no longer. So we try to stay away from that.
Aerial application has come a long way since the rickety old biplane. Recent technology developments such as GPS, aerial imaging and prescription mapping, and various dispersal systems have revolutionized the aerial application industry. Planes are equipped with GPS systems that provide guidance accuracy and show the pilot an electronic mapping system. On average, each aerial application business has 2 to 3 aircraft, ranging in price from $100,000 to nearly $2 million, depending on hopper size, engine type, and engine size. 84% of the aircraft used are fixed wing, while the remaining 16% are rotorcraft or helicopters. Ag aircraft are ruggedly built to handle 30 to 100 takeoffs and landings every day from rough landing strips, and they offer protection and good visibility for the pilot. In addition to GPS, aerial application aircraft also use GIS, Geographical Information Systems, flow controls, real-time meteorological systems, and precisely calibrated spray equipment. Precision application equipment results in less pesticide product being applied to more acres and can ensure an even more targeted delivery by further mitigating off-target drift. The ability to precisely apply products also results in greater fuel efficiency. What types of vehicles are used in aerial spraying?
We run air tractors. We've got a 502 and a 602. There's three different models, manufacturers out there. There's Thrush, Air Tractor, and the Ag Cat, which is a Grumman. So there's really three makes, and all of ours are air tractors. These airplanes are work airplanes. They get used specifically for spraying. They're built and designed for that, and they're really not good at anything else other than what they're designed for.
Back in the day, they used to be modified from other airplanes like Piper Cubs or Stearmans, but now these airplanes are made specifically for this job. They've got a lot of horsepower, but they don't go very fast. This airplane is made in Old Ming, Texas. It's Air Tractor 502. My boss, Dave Anderson, bought it new. He got to go down and watch it being built, and that was in 2008.
Early on in the day, you know, when this all started, they modified the Stearmans, which were, a lot of those were surplus from military. The Stearmans, they put spray tanks in them. Piper Cubs, Super Cubs, they put spray tanks in. For the last 40 years, most of the airplanes have been specifically designed and built for spraying.
In addition to supporting farmers, aerial applicators also protect forestry and play a role in protecting public health by combating mosquitoes carrying diseases such as the West Nile virus, as well as providing firefighting in areas prone to wildfires. Aerial application aircraft can also serve as water bombers. What are the other purposes for air spraying?
I have never done it, but my boss, Dave, has done firebombing just around the area. Here, we don't go anywhere for that, but there's an emergency gate that you can drop open and it lets water out, and that's what we use for putting on fires and stuff. And the water will come out pretty dang quick, so you don't have, you know, you kind of got one shot and then you got to go get more, but it works really good, especially in areas where fire trucks can't go, like down in the draws up here to the north, and you know, fire trucks can't get down there, so they either watch it burn or they call us.
We do have an agreement with one of the local counties and cities that if something gets out of hand, we can come drop water. Haven't had to yet, but they are also used for that, but we haven't used them for it.
Thanks to the aerial application and the technology leaps and improvements in ag aviation, farmers can provide a healthy, plentiful, and economical food supply that has not come at the expense of environmental sustainability. Some of the environmental benefits and best environmental practices of aerial application include cover crops, which help control erosion, retain soil nutrients, improve water quality, break disease and insect cycles, and yield benefits to treat in multiple conditions, resulting in better timing, enabling farmers to treat crops more effectively. Many ag pilots begin their careers mixing chemicals and serving as loaders or mechanics for the plane. What type of chemicals do air sprayers use?
Commonly here we do a lot of fungicide and insecticide on wheat fields, corn fields, soybean fields. We do pasture spraying and some other herbicides, typically when it gets more wet and the ground rigs can't get in.
The chemicals that we have now are very, very safe. We typically don't worry too much about what we're doing. We're very aware of what the wind direction is doing while we're out spraying. No matter what chemical I have in there, we avoid spraying getting close to town. We avoid getting close to farmsteads and yards, and we always like to hang back, give kind of a buffer zone, or any crops that I could also hurt with whatever chemical I'm spraying. The detriment of it is probably just knowing what people have planted next to the field you're spraying. And sometimes that gets a little bit tricky, and if I get a little bit too much chemical over there, you know, it'll show up on their crop if it's sensitive to whatever I'm spraying. That's why we're so careful with wind directions, and as long as it's blowing away from their they're susceptible crop, I can be just fine.
The flying involved in aerial application is technically challenging and occasionally hazardous, so it is imperative that pilots know what they're doing. From the ground up, pilots who enter the aerial application industry are trained in all aspects of aerial application, safe pesticide use, and entomology. The idea behind this is to minimize the risk to the environment. So how is air spraying different from traditional flying?
Here in the crop dusting world, typically we are applying at, say, 12 to 15 foot, 8 to 12 foot, somewhere in there, above the canopy of the crop. So we're in a very different environment than most other forms of aviation. Most other commercial pilot activities, either, unless you're flying, say, pipeline or power line patrol, typically we're the only ones out there under 500 foot conducting our operations. I would say, you know, everybody else, if you're flying for hire, if you're flying for charter, you're up, you know, you're getting up, getting high, getting more fuel efficiency out of your airplane to get to your destination. We usually land and take off at the same airport. We're multiple times a day, as opposed to, you know, other commercial, like say airliners or whatnot, you know, they're going from airport to airport to airport across the country, and you know, we're here taking care of our customers, so it's usually one or two airports that we're working out of, and we set up camp and go. So to be a commercial applicator, you need, in one of these airplanes, you need a commercial applicator's license, which is through the Kansas Department of Agriculture. So you'll need that license. You'll need a commercial pilot certificate, which means you can be paid to fly these airplanes. And then you need a tail wheel time, because these airplanes have the little wheel in the back and they keep you on your toes. You gotta be trained up on how to fly one of these and land and take off safely to meet the insurance requirements, because it's an expensive piece of equipment and we're in a high-risk environment, and insurance is pretty strict. So getting the appropriate amount of fly time and the correct types of airplanes will lead you right into one of these.
The average hired aerial applicator pilot has over 19 years of experience in the industry, whereas the average aerial applicator operator has over 27 years of experience. Ag pilots have their commercial pilot's licenses. They also must be registered as commercial pesticide applicators in the states in which they make applications, and must meet the requirements of federal aviation regulations, which allows for low-level aviation operations. NAAA works with the federal government to invest in researching, developing, and testing aerial application technologies to strengthen the safe application of crop protection products by air. What are the guidelines that air spraying pilots have to follow?
So with the FAA, we have to abide by the 137 agricultural certificate, which is what this operation is, and that regulates all the crop dusting activities that you do. So there's a certain amount of, we're allowed to fly closer to things. We don't have to adhere by some of the regulations of 1,000 feet from people, places, vessels, things like that. So we're allowed to get down on the crop, conduct our activities, and then get back, you know, to the airport safely. As far as the EPA guidelines and stuff that we have to adhere by, most every product that we're dispensing has a label, and we have to adhere to that label. And right in there, it'll tell us for agricultural or for dispensing out of an airplane, we have to abide by these regulations. And, you know, it's like 75% boom width. We can't exceed that. There's drift information as far as the droplet size that they want you to have, the wind speeds that you can apply that certain product in, the different worker protection, safety aspects of it, whether you need, whenever you're loading and mixing, whether you need long pants, shoes, socks, rubber gloves, eye protection, because some of these things in the concentrated forms, you don't want them on you. We take great caution and care adhering by all the labels to get the product in the airplane and get the product on the field for the customer.
Over wetlands and rough terrain, spraying pesticides and fertilizers, aerial applicators are a vital part of Kansas's agriculture industry. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Real Ag on air spraying. As always, you can check out this and other episodes of Real Ag on SmokyHillsPBS.org. From the producers at Smoky Hills PBS, this has been Real Ag. Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.